Jack Harper stood in a bright alien medical bay, his eyes wide as he looked around at the strange tools and glowing machines. The air was warm and smelled faintly sweet, and a low hum from the walls made the place feel alive. He had been called here by the alien captain without any warning, and he still did not know why. The captain was tall and insect-like, with a thin body covered in shining plates of green and gold. 4 black eyes studied Jack with a calm but unreadable expression. The captain's voice was soft and smooth, carried through a translator in Jack's ear. "Human crewman, we have assigned you a new and vital duty for this mission." Jack blinked. "What kind of duty?" he asked, trying to sound confident though his stomach felt tight. The captain explained that some of the alien crew members, all female, produced a rare liquid that was extremely valuable. This liquid, the captain said, was a powerful nutrient for their young, and also a vital source of energy for the ship's bioreactor. Without it, the mission could not continue. Jack was still confused. "What does this have to do with me?" The captain tilted their heads slightly. "You will be responsible for collecting this liquid every day, without fail." It took Jack a few moments to understand, and when he did, his mouth went dry. "You mean milk?" The captain simply nodded. "Yes, in your language, this is correct. It is called lactation among your kind." Jack almost laughed, thinking it was a joke, but the captain's face showed no humor. This was serious, and refusal was not an option. His military contract with the Interstellar Alliance was strict. Orders were to be obeyed. He swallowed hard. "All right, I'll do it," he said quietly. The captain led him down a long silver corridor. The walls glowed with a soft blue light, and the floor vibrated under his boots as the great engines worked far below. They reached a large door that slid open. With a hiss, inside was a wide, clean chamber filled with strange seats and curved machines Jack had never seen before. And there they were, the alien women. They sat in a neat row, tall and graceful, with smooth pale skin that shimmered faintly under the lights. Their large eyes, bright like gemstones, followed Jack as he stepped inside. Some of them had long, silver hair, others had no hair at all. Their clothes were simple white robes that draped softly over their forms. Jack felt the heat rise in his face. He had worked with aliens before, but never in such a personal way. The women did not speak, but their eyes held different emotions: curiosity, shyness, and something else he could not name. He gave a small nod in greeting, unsure of what else to do. A short alien technician approached him, carrying a device shaped like a smooth silver cone attached to soft tubes. The technician showed him how it worked, how the device would gently extract the milk without causing pain. Jack listened carefully, trying to ignore his own discomfort. It was clear this was a professional process for them, not something strange or shameful. The technician guided him to one of the alien women. She looked young, her eyes a soft violet color. She gave him a slight smile, or at least what he thought was a smile, and sat back in the seat. The device was placed, the machine hummed quietly, and a pale, glowing liquid began to flow through the tubes into a container. Jack watched, fascinated and uneasy at the same time. The translator in his ear picked up faint whispers between the women. Most of the words were unclear, but one phrase came through again and again: the coming hunger. Jack frowned, wondering what it meant. He turned to the technician, but the alien avoided his question, focusing only on the process. When the session was over, the woman bowed her head slightly in thanks, and Jack returned the gesture. He helped store the containers in a glowing storage unit along the wall. Each one was marked with strange alien symbols. The technician explained that the milk would be processed and shared among the crew, as well as stored for the journey ahead. As Jack cleaned the machine, he felt a deep vibration run through the floor. It was different from the normal engine hum, heavier, slower, almost like a distant heartbeat. The alien women fell silent, their eyes shifting toward the ceiling. Jack looked up too, though he saw nothing. The technician muttered something. quickly in their own language, and Jack caught only 2 words through the translator: nebula and feeding. His skin prickled. He wanted to ask more, but the technician hurried him out of the chamber. The captain met him in the hall, their voice calm but firm. "You did well for your first time, crewman. Remember, this is not just a task. It is a responsibility for the survival of all aboard this vessel." Jack nodded, but his mind was still on those whispered words, the coming hunger, whatever they meant. He had a feeling this assignment was going to be far stranger and more dangerous than anyone had told him. Jack Harper woke to the soft blue light of his cabin. The hum of the alien ship was constant, like the slow breathing of some giant creature. He had not slept well. His mind kept going back to the quiet chamber, the strange device, and the alien women with their bright, unblinking eyes. Today, he knew, would be his first full shift on this strange duty. He dressed quickly in the plain black work uniform provided by the ship. It was made from a smooth fabric that adjusted to the temperature of his body. When he stepped into the corridor, the air smelled faintly sweet again. That scent seemed to follow him everywhere now. He wondered if it came from the alien milk or from the machines used to collect it. The short alien technician was waiting for him outside the chamber. The technician's name was difficult to pronounce, so Jack simply called him Ren. Ren greeted him with a polite bow, then handed him a small control panel. "Today you learn the full process." The translator in Jack's ear whispered. Inside, the alien women were already seated in their curved chairs. Their robes flowed gently around them. The light above was warm and golden this time. Jack guessed it was meant to make them feel calm. Ren moved quickly, preparing the silver devices and checking each tube. Jack noticed how carefully the devices were cleaned. There was no rush, no wasted motion. This was clearly a task of great importance. Ren showed Jack how to attach the soft ends of the device to each subject. The material was flexible and warm, almost alive. Jack's hands moved awkwardly at first, but Ren's sharp clicks of disapproval made him slow down and focus. When done properly, the device sealed with a faint hiss, and the pale glowing liquid began to flow. Jack kept his eyes on the process, trying not to think about the strangeness of his job. He told himself it was just another duty, like repairing engines or loading cargo. Still, he could not ignore the way the women watched him. Some looked curious, others seemed distant. A few avoided his gaze completely when each container filled. Jack removed it and replaced it with an empty one. Ren marked them with alien symbols before placing them in the glowing storage unit. Jack noticed one container was brighter than the others. Ren caught his stare and explained. Different women produce different strengths of nutrient. Some are rare, very valuable. The translator device in Jack's ear picked up soft whispers again. The women were speaking to each other in low tones. He caught fragments. "The hunger comes, and too soon." His stomach tightened. He wanted to ask what it meant, but Ren ignored his questions, acting as if he had not heard them at all. After the morning session, Ren led Jack to a side room filled with tall tanks of clear fluid. The air here was cooler. The tanks connected to a central machine that pulsed with slow waves of light. "This is where the milk is processed," Ren explained. "It is stored for the young and for the ship's heart." Jack frowned. "The ship's heart," Ren nodded. "The reactor is alive. It feeds on the same nutrient. Without it, the engines will stop." Jack had never heard of a living reactor. The thought made him uneasy. If the ship depended on this milk for power, then the safety of everyone on board depended on the health of the alien women. He wondered if the strange whispers about hunger were connected to the reactor somehow. Later, Jack returned to the chamber for the afternoon session. The golden light had shifted to a soft purple glow. The air was warmer now, and the women seemed more relaxed. One of them, with long silver hair and eyes like deep water, gestured for him to come closer. Her voice was gentle but urgent. The translator caught only part of her words. Danger. Feeding. Protect. Before Jack could ask what she meant, a low rumble passed through the floor. It was deeper than the usual engine vibration, and it made the containers of milk tremble slightly. Ren's faceplates shifted in a way that looked like concern. He hurried the process, moving faster than before. The women grew silent again, their eyes fixed on the ceiling. When the session ended, Jack helped carry the containers to storage. He noticed Ren locking the storage unit with a heavy metal seal. That was new. "Why lock it now?" Jack asked. Ren hesitated, then simply said, "Precaution." As they left the chamber, Jack caught sight of the alien captain speaking in low tones to another officer. The officer's arms moved quickly, a sign of agitation. Jack heard the translator whisper a few words from their speech. "Shadow, approach, milk." His skin prickled. Something was coming, and it was not good in the corridor. Back to his cabin, Jack thought about the long journey ahead. The nebula the technician had mentioned yesterday, the living reactor, the whispers of hunger. It all formed a picture he could not yet see clearly. He had been given a strange and uncomfortable job, but it was becoming clear that it was more important than anyone had told him. That night, as he lay in his bunk, the soft hum of the ship seemed louder than usual. It carried a faint rhythm, like the heartbeat of something enormous and unseen. Jack closed his eyes, but the image of those bright containers and the words "the hunger comes" would not leave his mind. Jack Harper woke to a soft alarm in his cabin. The sound was not loud, but it carried a strange pulse, as if warning him of something more than just the start of a shift. The blue light in the walls was dimmer than usual, and the air felt heavier. He pulled on his uniform and stepped into the corridor. The ship seemed quieter, the usual hum muted. Ren was waiting for him outside the milking chamber. The small alien's faceplates were tight, their movements sharp. "We are passing through the edge of the nebula," the translator whispered in Jack's ear. "There will be energy surges." Jack frowned. "Is that dangerous?" Ren hesitated. "It can be." Inside the chamber, the alien women were already seated, but their usual calm seemed gone. Their bright eyes moved quickly, and their voices whispered in low tones. Jack caught fragments through the translator. Dark shapes and hunger wakes. The golden light overhead flickered, replaced by a cooler green glow. Ren moved from one woman to the next, checking the devices, urging Jack to hurry. When the first device sealed, the pale glowing milk flowed faster than Jack had ever seen. The liquid seemed to almost shimmer with tiny sparks. Ren muttered something under their breath, but the translator gave no clear meaning. Jack glanced at the women, noticing that their skin seemed warmer, almost glowing, but their breathing was heavier. As they worked, the ship gave a sudden lurch. The floor tilted slightly under Jack's boots, and the containers on the table rattled. A deep, distant sound rolled through the walls, a slow, drawn-out vibration that seemed alive. The women froze, their eyes lifting toward the ceiling. One of them gripped Jack's sleeve. Speaking quickly, the translator caught only 2 words. "They feed." Ren urged him to keep going. "We must collect as much as we can before the next surge." Jack wanted to ask why, but the urgency in Ren's tone made him work faster. Every filled container was passed quickly to storage, and the heavy lock clicked shut again. After the session, Ren led Jack to the processing room. The tall tanks pulsed with brighter light than before. The living reactor's core was visible through a wide observation window. It looked like a vast heart of glowing tissue, its slow beat sending waves of light through the pipes connected to it. Jack felt an uneasy shiver. "It feeds on this," Ren said quietly, "and it will need more before we leave the nebula." Jack stared at the heart-like reactor. "And if it does not get enough?" Ren's faceplates shifted. "Then the ship dies, and so do we." Before Jack could answer, the lights flickered again, and the hum of the reactor deepened. A faint shape moved in the greenish glow outside the observation window, not inside the reactor, but in the space beyond the ship. It was like a shadow, stretching and curling. Too large to fully see, Jack's breath caught. "What is that?" Ren looked at the shadow and spoke slowly. One of the feeders, back in the chamber, the women, were speaking in urgent tones. Sierra, the silver-haired one, looked at Jack with eyes that seemed to pierce through him. She gestured toward the ceiling and then made a closing motion with her hands. The translator tried to follow but failed to give a full sentence. The words that came through were simple but heavy. Close them out. Jack felt his heart pound. He didn't know what feeders were exactly, but the fear in Sierra's voice told him enough. He thought of the containers of milk locked away in the glowing reactor heart. If the feeders wanted the same nutrient, then they would come for it, and the ship would be their target. As the day went on, the surges grew stronger. Each time the ship shook, the women produced more milk but looked weaker afterward. Jack helped them drink a nutrient-rich liquid from small crystal cups. Ren explained it helped them recover faster. Jack wondered how long they could keep this up. That evening, Jack walked alone through a long observation corridor with windows looking out into the nebula. The view was breathtaking, swirling clouds of green, gold, and deep purple, lightning-like. Flashes rippled through the mist. But then he saw movement, slow and deliberate. A massive shadow drifted in the clouds, its outline shifting like smoke. It was following the ship. He stepped back from the glass, his chest tight. He could not tell how close it was, but he felt its presence. A strange low tone vibrated in the walls, and the translator in his ear buzzed with static. For a brief moment, he thought he heard a whisper in a voice not human or alien, just a deep, hollow sound that seemed to say, "Feed." When Jack returned to his cabin, he found a small container on his desk. Inside was a folded piece of soft alien cloth with a single symbol drawn on it. It was a circle with 3 curved lines inside. He didn't know what it meant, but he had seen it before, carved into the metal door of the milk storage unit. He placed the cloth down and sat on the edge of his bed. His thoughts were a tangled mess. The surge in milk production, the feeders, the living reactor, and the shadow outside. Whatever this nebula was, it was waking something that wanted what they had, and Jack was standing right in the middle of it. The ship's lights dimmed without warning, plunging the corridor into deep shadow. Jack Harper froze in place, listening. The hum of the reactor had slowed, its deep rhythm replaced by an irregular thud. Somewhere far away, a sharp alarm sounded, echoing through the metal halls. It was not the usual shift signal. This one was fast, urgent, almost panicked. Ren appeared at the end of the corridor, waving for Jack to follow. The small alien moved quickly, their feet making almost no sound. "Feeders are here," the translator whispered in Jack's ear. Jack felt his skin crawl. He had only seen their massive shadow through the nebula, but now they were close. Inside the ship's perimeter, they reached the milking chamber. The alien women were gathered in the center of the room, their robes pulled tight around them. Their bright eyes flicked toward the sealed door. Sierra stood at the front, her silver hair loose over her shoulders. She held one of the silver milking devices like a weapon, though it was clear it could not harm anything. Ren shoved a small storage case into Jack's hands. "Milk reserves," they said quickly. "We cannot let the feeders take them." Jack looked at the case. It was heavy, glowing faintly from within. He realized this was the strongest batch, the one that powered the reactor. If the feeders got this, the ship would be helpless. A deep clang rang through the walls, the sound of something striking the hull. The women flinched. Jack felt the vibration in his teeth. He glanced at the door, half expecting it to buckle inward. Ren moved to a control panel and began locking every entrance. Thick metal shutters slid over the main doors with a hiss. The captain's voice came over the ship's comms, calm but firm. "All crew to defense positions. Protect the reactor and nutrient stores at all costs." Jack's stomach tightened. He looked at Sierra, who gave him a slow nod, as if she trusted him to know what to do, though he barely knew himself. The first breach came moments later. The lights above flickered, and a section of the wall near the storage unit groaned. A crack appeared, not from metal tearing, but from something seeping through. It was black like smoke, but it moved with weight, pressing inward. Jack stepped back, gripping the case tightly. The black mass pushed into the room, forming long tendrils that curled toward the storage unit. The temperature dropped sharply. Jack could see his breath. The women huddled together, their eyes wide. Sierra stepped forward, her voice sharp, speaking words Jack could not understand. But the sound seemed to make the tendrils pause for a heartbeat. Ren shouted for Jack to move. Jack dashed toward the far exit, the case heavy in his arms. The corridor outside was darker than before, lit only by the faint glow of the emergency. Strips along the floor, behind him, the sound of metal groaning followed. The feeders were forcing their way deeper into the chamber. Jack ran, his boots pounding against the deck. The case pulsed with faint light. He didn't know where to take it, only that it had to be far from the feeders. He rounded a corner and almost collided with two alien soldiers in dark armor. One of them pointed toward the upper decks. "Reactor control," the translator said. Jack nodded and kept running. The upper decks were chaos, alarms blaring, crew shouting, and flashes of light from energy weapons firing down the halls. Jack caught glimpses of the feeders, shapes that shifted and stretched, impossible to see clearly. They moved like liquid shadow, slipping through cracks and vents. The soldiers' shots passed through them, slowing but not stopping there. Advance. Jack reached reactor control. The great heart of the ship throbbed behind a thick, transparent barrier. Its light was dimmer now, its beats slower. Engineers moved frantically, rerouting power, sealing bulkheads. Ren appeared again, somehow ahead of him. "Put the case here," they said, pointing to a platform beside the reactor feed. Jack placed it down, and a soft hum began as cables connected automatically. The reactor's light brightened slightly. Before Jack could breathe, the door to reactor control shook violently. A black tendril slipped through the small gap at the bottom, curling toward the case. Ren shouted and slammed a heavy gate over it. The tendril recoiled, but more were pressing. Against the walls, Sierra arrived then, flanked by two more women. Each carried a small container of milk. Glowing brightly, they moved with calm precision, attaching the containers to auxiliary feeds. The reactor pulsed brighter with each one connected. The beat in the walls grew stronger. The feeders outside screeched, a high alien sound that cut through the air. The lights in the control room flared, and Jack saw the shadows outside pull back slightly. Ren shouted something to the captain over the comms. The voice that replied was tense but steady. "We are holding them. Keep the reactor fed. They will leave when they cannot take more." Jack stood with his back to the reactor, watching the door shake under the feeder's assault. His hands were tight fists, his breathing fast. He had never fought like this before, not with guns, but with glowing liquid and a living machine. Yet he knew without doubt that if they failed, the ship would be lost. The shaking slowed. The screeches grew faint. Somewhere in the ship, a deep groan faded into silence. The lights steadied and the temperature warmed again. The tendrils outside slipped away, leaving only the dented metal of the doors behind. Ren looked at Jack and gave a slow nod. "You kept it safe," they said simply. Sierra stepped forward, her violet eyes soft but intense. "Not just safe," she said through the translator. "You kept us alive." Jack looked at the sealed case, still humming beside the reactor. The battle was over for now, but the shadow in the nebula was still out there, waiting. The ship was quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that felt wrong. Jack Harper stood in the reactor control room, staring at the sealed case of nutrient milk beside the glowing heart of the ship. The battle with the feeders had ended hours ago, yet he could still feel the echo of their presence, like a shadow clinging to the walls. Sierra stood nearby, speaking softly with Ren in their alien tongue. The translator caught only fragments. "Return, and more hunger, and soon." Jack stepped closer. "They're coming back, aren't they?" Ren hesitated before nodding. "Yes, the feeders do not stop until they take what they want, and they now know we have the richest source." Jack's chest tightened. He thought of the women in the milking chamber, of their tired eyes after each surge. He thought of the massive shadow drifting in the nebula. If the feeders returned in greater numbers, the ship would not survive another direct attack. They had to do something before that happened. He turned to the captain, who had arrived silently in the room. The tall, insect-like figure listened as Jack spoke. "We can't just wait for them to attack again. We need to make them come to us on our terms. We need bait." The captain tilted their head. "Bait," Jack nodded. "Milk, enough to lure them in, then trap them." The idea made Wren's faceplates shift with unease. "Dangerous," they said. "If the feeders reach the bait before the trap is sprung, they will take it and grow stronger." Jack met their gaze. "Then we make sure they never get the chance." The captain gave a slow nod. "Explain your plan." Jack outlined it. They would prepare several containers of the most potent milk, place them in the cargo bay near the outer airlock, and when the feeders entered to take them, they would seal the bay and release an energy pulse from the ship's weapons grid. The pulse would not just push them away, it would scatter their forms, leaving them too weak to return for some time. Wren frowned. "The energy pulse will also damage the bay's systems." Jack shrugged. "Then we repair it later. Better to fix metal than to bury the crew." Preparation began immediately. The milking chamber worked at full capacity. The women knew the danger and did not protest, though Jack could see the strain in their faces. Sierra's hands trembled slightly as she helped attach the devices, but her eyes were steady. The containers glowed brighter than usual, the liquid inside swirling like captured starlight. By the time the last container was filled, Jack's arms ached from carrying them. They loaded the cargo bay carefully, arranging the milk in a neat cluster near the center. The bay was a massive open space with high ceilings and thick metal walls. Above, the large outer doors led directly into space. Wren and two alien engineers worked to connect the energy pulse emitters to the bay's structure. Jack stayed nearby, checking every connection twice. He could not afford mistakes. The captain monitored the nebula through the bridge, waiting for signs of movement. Hours passed and tension grew. The crew spoke little. Every vibration in the hull made Jack's heart beat faster. Then the call came from the captain. "They are here." The nebula outside shifted in the observation feed, dark shapes moving like slow waves through the clouds. The feeders were coming, drawn by the scent of the concentrated milk. Jack felt sweat run down his back. He took position by the manual trigger for the bay doors. Wren stood beside the emitter controls. The first tendrils of shadow slipped through the outer shields, curling along the bay's ceiling. They stretched downward, reaching for the glowing containers. The temperature dropped sharply. Jack's breath misted in the air. The feeders moved faster now, as if sensing their prize was close. Jack waited, every muscle tight. He could hear the hum of the emitters building power. Wren's voice came through the comms. "Not yet, let them all come in." More tendrils poured into the bay, forming thick columns of shifting black. They wrapped around each other, forming shapes that almost looked like creatures, but never fully solid. The moment came when the last of the shadows entered. Jack slammed the control. The massive bay doors sealed shut with a deep clang. At the same instant, Wren triggered the emitters. A blinding flash of blue light filled the bay, followed by a sharp crack that made Jack's ears ring. The feeders writhed and twisted, their forms breaking apart like smoke caught in a storm. The light tore through them, scattering their mass into tiny fragments that dissolved into nothing. A screech filled the bay, so loud it vibrated in Jack's bones. Then silence. Jack's vision cleared, and he saw only the empty space where the feeders had been. The containers of milk still glowed in the center, untouched. The bay's walls were scorched, and several panels hung loose, but the trap had worked. Wren exhaled slowly, their faceplates relaxing. "They are gone." Sierra stepped into the bay, her violet eyes soft but full of relief. "You led them into the storm," she said through the translator. "And we are safe." Jack managed a small smile. Though his chest still ached from the tension, he looked out through the observation port, where the nebula swirled quietly again. For now, the feeders had been driven back, but he knew they would not forget. And neither would he. The ship floated in the quiet of space, drifting through the nebula like a shadow among stars. Jack Harper stood on the bridge with the captain and Wren, the blue glow of the console screens lighting their faces. They had survived the feeders' last attack, but survival was not enough anymore. Jack could feel it in his bones. If they kept running and waiting, the feeders would eventually return stronger. The crew needed to strike first. The captain's tall frame leaned forward, their voice low and measured. The feeders will return, but now they know we can fight. They will not come lightly next time. Jack nodded slowly, which means we have a chance to choose the battlefield, not them. Wren turned to him, their eyes bright with caution. You mean to hunt them? Jack met their gaze. Yes, and this time we finish it. The thought made the bridge go quiet. Only the hum of the ship's engines filled the air. The alien crew exchanged glances, uncertain, but Jack could see something in their eyes. Not fear, but the beginning of hope. He knew that feeling well. It was the same one he had felt as a soldier before a final mission. Sierra entered the bridge, her violet hair tied back, carrying a small container of milk in her hands. You plan to lure them again, she said. Her translator spoke the words in the same calm tone she always had. Jack nodded. But not like last time. This time we go into their home. Wren's plates shifted in surprise. The nest. Jack took a breath. Yes. You know where it is, don't you? Wren hesitated before nodding. We have records of a dense cluster deep in the nebula, a place where they gather in great numbers. Jack clenched his fists. Then that's where we go. And we take the fight to them. The captain moved toward the main display, pulling up a swirling map of the nebula. A dark region appeared at its center, thick clouds twisting around an unseen core. This is their heart, the captain said. Few ships that enter ever return. Jack stared at it, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. Then we make sure we do. Preparations began quickly. The crew reinforced the ship's shields, mounted every energy emitter they had, and loaded several containers of milk for bait. Sierra worked with Jack in the milking chamber, her hands steady even as she knew what they were risking. The women understood now that their gift was the key to the fight, and they gave it willingly. Jack barely slept, spending most of his time helping the engineers strengthen the ship's outer plating. Every clang of a wrench, every spark from a welder, felt like another step toward either victory or destruction. 2 days later, the ship slipped deeper into the nebula. The swirling clouds grew thicker, lightning-like flashes rippling through them. The sensors picked up strange readings, shapes moving in the mist, too large and slow to be debris. As they neared the nest, the clouds parted to reveal an open void. In its center floated a massive cluster of black shapes, twisting and curling together like a living storm. Jack felt a chill crawl down his spine. The feeder's home was alive. With movement, thousands of shadow forms flowing in and out of the mass. The captain gave the order, and the containers of milk were released. Drifting slowly toward the cluster, the liquid inside glowed brighter in the darkness. Drawing the attention of the feeders, several broke away from the mass, gliding silently toward the bait. Jack stood ready at the weapons console, Wren at his side. The captain's voice came over the comms. Wait until they are within range. Jack's hands gripped the controls. His pulse thundered in his ears. The feeders came closer, their shapes blotting out the faint light of distant stars. When the first tendrils reached for the containers, Jack fired. Blinding arcs of energy shot through the void, tearing into the shadows. The feeders recoiled, twisting violently. But more came forward from the nest, drawn by both the bait and the attack. The ship shook under the force of their counterstrike. The shields flared as waves of dark energy slammed into them. Sparks flew from a nearby console, and a crew member shouted in pain. Jack gritted his teeth and kept firing. Ren's hands danced over the emitter controls, sending pulse after pulse into the swarm. Sierra's voice came through the comms from the milking chamber. More bait ready, sending it now. Another set of containers drifted into the fight. The feeders swarmed toward them, their hunger making them reckless. That was the opening Jack needed. He overrode the safety limits. On the emitters, flooding the swarm with raw power, the blast lit up the nebula like a newborn star. Shadows twisted and broke apart. The cluster in the distance shuddering under the force. Pieces of the swarm scattered, dissolving into the mist. The few that remained pulled back toward the nest, their movements weaker. The captain's voice cut through the noise. They are breaking. Hold your fire. Jack's hands trembled as he eased off the controls. Breathing hard, the view outside was a storm of fading light and drifting fragments. The nest was still there, but smaller, less alive. Ren looked at Jack with something close to admiration. We have wounded them deeply, Jack nodded, though his mind was already thinking ahead. Then we go again, until there's nothing left to come after us. Sierra entered the bridge. Her expression calm but proud. You have turned the tide, she said. Jack looked out into the swirling void and felt the first real spark of victory. The ship floated at the edge of the feeder's nest, the air on the bridge thick with tension. Jack Harper stood at the weapons console, staring at the dark swirling mass ahead. It was smaller now after their last attack, but it still pulsed with a dangerous life. If they left now, the feeders might rebuild and return stronger, and that thought burned in Jack's chest like fire. He knew this had to be the end. The captain moved beside him, their voice low. One more strike, and we finish this. Ren stood on the other side, his armored plates glinting in the console light. But it will not be easy. The nest will defend itself with everything it has left. Jack's eyes stayed on the shifting black shapes ahead. Then we give everything we have left too. Sierra stepped onto the bridge, carrying the last of the milk containers. Her calm voice carried a strange finality. This is all we can give. Use it well. Jack met her gaze and nodded. You've given more than enough. We'll make it count. The plan was simple but deadly. They would drive the ship directly into the heart of the nest while releasing the milk as a lure. When the feeders swarmed to feed, they would trigger the overload in the emitters and release every ounce of power the ship had in one single blinding burst. It was suicide if mistimed, but Jack knew there was no other way. Engines roared as the ship surged forward. The nebula's clouds twisted faster around them, lightning flashing in eerie silence. Ahead, the nest loomed larger and larger, dark tendrils stretching toward them like the arms of a sleeping giant waking in anger. The sensors screamed as the feeders began to stir, thousands of them peeling away from the nest to meet the intruder head on the first wave hit fast, their shadows slamming into the shields. The deck shook and alarms filled the air. Jack gripped the controls, firing burst after burst of energy into the swarm. Each hit tore holes in the feeders' bodies, but more came, drawn by the glowing containers drifting ahead of the ship. Ren's hands flew across the console, keeping the shields from failing. We cannot take much more of this, he shouted over the noise. Jack didn't look at him. We just need to get closer. The feeders pressed harder, their tendrils wrapping around the ship's hull, scraping and tearing at the plating. Sparks erupted from a panel as systems overloaded, but the ship pushed forward, the heart of the nest now filling the entire view screen. It was massive, a churning vortex of black energy and moving shapes. It felt alive, watching them, waiting. Now the captain ordered, and the last containers of milk were released. Drifting into the dark center of the nest, the feeders reacted instantly, breaking their attack on the ship to chase the glowing bait deeper inside. Jack's heart pounded. We're in position, he said, fingers hovering over the emitter. Controls, the captain gave a single nod. Do it. Jack slammed the controls forward, overriding every safety limit. The emitters roared to life, flooding the nest with blinding light and raw energy. The entire ship shook as if caught in the grip of a great storm. The feeders shrieked. In a soundless fury, their shapes twisting and burning away under the onslaught. The light grew brighter. So bright it turned the entire view screen into White-Wren shouted a warning as the power reading spiked into the red. "We are going to lose the core." Jack didn't stop. "Then we take them with us." The bridge was shaking so violently. It was hard to stand. The hum of the ship's heart became a scream. And then came the burst. The explosion was not sound but light, pouring out in every direction. The nest writhed and shattered, breaking apart like ice under a hammer. The feeders dissolved into nothing, their shadows torn to pieces. The blast waved through the ship backward, spinning it through the nebulous clouds. Systems died one by one, until only emergency lights remained. The bridge was silent, except for the soft hiss of the air recyclers struggling to work. Jack opened his eyes slowly, his hands still gripping the controls. The view outside showed only empty clouds now, the nest gone, no movement, no feeders. Wren's voice was quiet, almost disbelieving. "It is over." The captain leaned on the railing, exhaustion clear in every movement. "We did it." Sierra stepped closer to Jack, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You have saved us all." Her voice was soft but steady. Jack let out a long breath. The weight he had carried since the feeders first attacked finally lifting. He didn't feel like a hero, just a man who had done what needed to be done. The ship limped out of the nebula, its scars a reminder of the battle. The crew moved slowly through the corridors, tending to the wounded and repairing what they could. In the distance, the stars opened before them like a promise of safety. Jack stood alone at the observation deck, watching the endless sky. He thought of the strange assignment that had brought him here, of the alien women and the milk that had somehow become their weapon, and of the fight that had bound them all. Together, humanity and alienkind, side by side, for the first time in many weeks. Jack allowed himself a small smile. The war was over, at least for now, and they had survived.